Hey, my friends, my little storytellers. We are ready to dig into our first story this week. I'm excited to read. Thunder Rose is the name of the story. So we need to make sure we got our vocabulary down before we get into our story today. So let's look at these vocabulary words that we're going to be working with this week. The first one is recall. If you recall something, you tell about something you remember. I can recall the name of my first teacher. Remember who your first teacher was? Did you go to pre-K or kindergarten? They didn't have pre-K when I went to school, but I went to Russellville Elementary for my first teacher in kindergarten. Her name was Miss Quillen. She was a wonderful teacher. I actually had her for kindergarten and second grade. I loved Miss Quillen. I recall a lot of wonderful things she taught me. Vividly. If you remember something vividly, you have a clear, detailed memory of it. He vividly remembered his first day of school. You know what I remember vividly about Miss Quillen's class? She used to give us these pretend money like Monopoly dollars when we do something good. Maybe we made a 100 on the spelling test or something like that. She would give us maybe like a pretend dollar. And then she had this treasure chest, and you could buy things from it when you got enough money. So I remember buying a Hot Wheel car from her in second grade. I vividly remember giving her those little pretend dollars to buy a Hot Wheel car. I thought that was the best thing ever. I vividly remember that. I have a clear memory of it. Now this word, it's a big word. It's got a lot of syllables. Accentuated. Say that. Accentuated. So how many syllables is that? Accentuated. A 5-syllable word. Accentuated. If something's accentuated, it has attention drawn to it. My mother accentuated her plain dress with a red scarf. So sometimes you might be telling a story and you might really want, let's say you're telling about your soccer game and you scored 5 goals in the game, and you might accentuate that part of your story. You might say, we played a soccer game today and I scored 5 goals. You really drew attention to it. So you accentuated it. Partial. If you're partial to something, you prefer it more than other things. I'm partial to mystery stories. So if you're partial to something, you like it better than you like other things. What kind of story do you like best? Is it a mystery? Is it informational like we've been read the last module? Do you like these stories we're going to read this week better about different characters and tall tales? Which one are you partial to? And the last word on this part is splendor. The splendor of something is its great beauty or impressive appearance. The photograph captured the splendor of the sunset. So splendor of something is its great beauty or impressive appearance. Splendor. Got a couple more words here. Let me scroll down. Excuse me if I cough a bunch this week. My allergies are just draining bad. Resourceful. If you are resourceful, you're good at solving problems quickly. Anna was resourceful and used recycled objects to build her science project. Resourceful. Good at solving problems. Are you resourceful? Or do you like solving problems? You can fix things quickly. My dad's resourceful. He can fix anything. I'm not so much. I wish I was more like him, but he can fix anything and solve any problem, it seems like. Disposition. So we know the word position, just add the prefix dis to it, disposition. Your disposition is the way you tend to act or feel. His pleasant disposition helped him make friends. So it's the way you act. Somebody might say, well, what is that person like? Well, they're really, really nice. They're really easy to talk to. They have this really calm disposition. Or somebody might say, they have a mean disposition. They're always yelling and fussing and fighting with people. Disposition is how you act or feel. Got some big words this time. Commendable. Commendable. If you do something commendable, you do it well and earn praise. The girl was rewarded for a commendable job. Some of you did a commendable job on your social study, your Civil War test last week. You did it very well, and you get some praise for doing well on it. Last word here is devastation. Devastation is a terrible damage or complete destruction. The fire caused devastation to several buildings. So devastation. There's our vocabulary for this week. Let's take a look at this anchor chart here. Retell. Retell. Retelling a story helps you understand it better. When you retell a story, you think about who, what, but, and how to help you retell a story. Who is the main character? What does the main character want? But what is the problem does the main character face? And how is the problem resolved at the end? When you retell a story, you tell about so who, what, but how is the problem resolved in the end? Also, when you retell a story, you got to tell about important characters. Don't leave them out. Tell about the setting. Tell the events in order, the beginning, middle, and the end. And tell about the conflict, what the problem is, and the resolution, how it's solved. And then you use sequence words like first, next, then, later, and finally. I'm going to tell you a crazy story. It's kind of annoying, an annoying story, but I bet you're going to want to retell it after I tell it to you. You may have heard it before. It's called Herman the Worm. Have you ever heard the story of Herman the Worm? It's got a lot of repetition in it, so it's easy to remember. It's also very annoying, but you're going to love it if you've not heard it. So I want you to retell somebody this story today. Here it goes. One day, I was sitting on a fence post chewing on my chewing gum, playing with my yo-yo, woo, woo. And along came Herman the Worm, and he was this long. And I said, Herman, what's the matter with you? And he said, I ate a grape. One day, I was sitting on the fence post chewing on my chewing gum, playing with my yo-yo, woo, woo. And along came Herman the Worm, and he was this long. And I said, Herman, what's the matter with you? He said, I ate an apple. One day, I was sitting on the fence post chewing on my chewing gum, playing with my yo-yo, woo, woo. And along came Herman the Worm, and he was this long. And I said, Herman, what's the matter with you? And he said, I ate a banana. One day, I was sitting on the fence post chewing on my chewing gum, playing with my yo-yo, woo, woo. And along came Herman the Worm, and he was this long. I said, Herman, what's the matter with you? He said, I ate a cantaloupe. One day, I was sitting on the fence post chewing on my chewing gum, playing with my yo-yo, woo, woo. And along came Herman the Worm, and he was this long. And I said, Herman, what's the matter with you? He said, I ate a watermelon. One day, I was sitting on the fence post chewing on my chewing gum, playing with my yo-yo, woo, woo. And along came Herman the Worm, and he was this long. And I said, Herman, what's the matter with you? And he said, I burped. I told you that was an annoying story. Have you ever heard that one before? I bet you can retell it, though. Can you remember who the main character is and what they do and what happens each time you tell it? First, next, then, later, and then finally what happens? So retell that story to somebody today, and they'll say, that's a dumb story. Where'd you hear that? You can say, crazy Mr. Helton told it to us today. Okay, well, let's see a much better story than that story. And this story is called Thunder Rose. And this is on it's in your book, page 82, I believe is where this story starts. Page 82 in your book. You'll want to open it up and turn there with me now. It's page 83, sorry. 83, so we can read this story together. Thunder Rose by Jardine Nolan, illustrated by Kadir Nielsen. What do you notice about Thunder Rose? She looks like maybe she lives on the plains. She's got some kind of rope, maybe like a whip or something. But it looks like maybe she's a cowgirl. She's got those chaps on, those cowgirl pants and boots and jeans and a cowboy-looking shirt with a bandana and a big old hat. Got a piece of straw in her mouth. And back there is some kind of cow or ox or something. A bunch of them back there in the background. And what do you see in the very background? You see this big storm coming. Lots of lightning coming down. Thunder Rose, what is this story going to be about? Well, let's read and find out. And again, we're on page 84 as we begin reading in your reading book. Rose was the first child born free and easy to Jackson and Millicent Magruder. I recall most vividly the night she came into this world. Hailing rain, flashing lightning, and booming thunder pounded the door, inviting themselves in for the blessed event. A lot of vivid language there, isn't there? It makes us think about the hail and the flashes of lightning, booming thunder, some good adjectives in that sentence. Taking in her first breath of life, the infant did not cry out. Rather, she sat up and looked around. She took hold of that lightning, rolled it into a ball, and set it above her shoulder, while the thunder echoed over the other. They say this just accentuated the fact that the child had the power of thunder and lightning coursing through her veins. She's going to grow up to be good and strong, all right, Doc Holliday said. The child turned to the good doctor with a thoughtful glance and replied, I reckon I will want to do more than that. Thank you very kindly. Wow, what a way to start life, being born and grab some lightning, huh? You think that's maybe an exaggeration? There's baby Rose. Shifting her gaze to the two loving lights shining on her, which were Ma and Pa, she replied, Much obliged to you both for the chance to make my way in the world. Then she announced to no one in particular, I'm right partial to the name Rose. So much in love with this gift of their lives, her Ma and Pa hovered over her in watchful splendor. Overcome with that love, they lifted their voices in song, an old song and a melody so sweet and true, a lullaby passed down from the ages, echoing since the beginning of time. There's Rose again with Ma and Pa. Or maybe Pa and the doctor or somebody. There is music ringing so sweetly in my ears, the newborn exclaimed. It's given me a fortunate feeling rumbling deep in the pit of me. I'll register it here with the bull's eye set on the center of my heart and see what I can do with it one day. Rose snored up plenty that first night, breathing on her own, rattling the rafters on the roof right along with the booming thunder. There was nothing quiet about her slumber. What's slumber? It's sleep, right? She seemed determined to be just as forceful as that storm. With the thunder and lightning keeping watch over her the rest of the night, her Ma and Pa just took to calling her Thunder Rose. Well, now we know how she got her name. She snored so loud. The next morning, when the sun was high yellow in that billowy blue sky, Rose woke up hungry as a bear in spring, but not the least bit ornery. Minding her manners, she politely thanked her Ma for the milk, but it was not enough to quench her hungry thirst. Rose preferred instead to drink her milk straight from the cow. Ugh. Her Ma was right grateful to have such a resourceful child. No other newborn had the utter strength to lift a whole cow clear over her head and almost drink it dry. In a moment's time, Rose did, and quite daintily so. She was as pretty as a picture, had the sweetest disposition, but don't let yourself be misled. That child was full of lightning and thunder. Out on that paper bag brown, dusty, dry, wide open space, Rose often was found humming a sweet little tune as she did her chores. And true to her word, Rose did more than grow good strong. The 2-year-old became quite curious about the pile of scrap iron lying next to the barn. Rose took a good-sized piece, stretched it here, bent it, and twisted it there. She constructed a thunderbolt as black as pitch to punctuate her name. She called it coal. Wherever she went, coal was always by her side. Noticing how skilled Rose was with the metal, her pa made sure there was an extra supply of it always around. At the age of 5, Rose did a commendable job of staking the fence without a bit of help. During her 8th and 9th years, Rose assembled some iron beams together with wood blocks she used to play with and constructed a building tall enough to scrape the sky, always humming as she worked. By the time she turned 12, Rose had perfected her metal bending practices. She formed delicately shaped alphabet letters to help the young ones learn to read. Wow, that's pretty amazing, isn't it? Look at this. I guess that's coal or lightning rod that she made. For his birthday, Rose presented her pa with a branding iron, a circle with the big MAC for Magruder in the middle, Just in time, too, because a herd of quick-tempered longhorn steer was stampeding its way up from the Rio Grande, and they were plowing a path straight toward her front door. Rose performed an eye-catching wonder, the likes of which was something to see. Running lightning fast toward the herd, using Cole for support, Rose vaulted into the air and landed on the back of the biggest lead steer like he was a merry-go-round pony. Grabbing a horn in each hand, Rose twisted that varmint to a complete halt. It was just enough to restrain the top bull and the rest of the herd. Wow. Look at her doing that there. Just a little girl twisting that horn. That big steer making him stop. But I believe what touched the critter's heart was when Rose began humming her little tune. That cantankerous ton of beef was restless no more. He became as playful as a kitten and even tried to purr. Rose named him Tater on account that was his favorite vegetable. Hearing Rose's lullaby put that considerable creature to sleep was the sweetest thing I had witnessed in a long, long time. After the dust had settled, Ma and Pa counted 2,700 head of cattle after they added in the 500 they already had. Using the scrap iron, Rose had to add a new section to the bullpen to hold them all. "What'd you do to the wire, Rose?" Ma asked, surprised and pleased at her daughter's latest creation. "Oh, that," she said. "While I was staking the fence, Pa asked me to keep a little Barbara J company. That little twisty pattern seems to make the baby laugh, so I think of it as Barbara's wire." "That was right clever of you to be so entertaining to the little one like that," her ma said. Rose just blushed. Over the years, that twisty wire caught on, and folks just called it barbed wire. Barbed wire fence. Her and the cows. Rose and her pa spent the whole next day sorting the animals that had not been branded. "One day soon, before the cold weather gets in," she told her pa, "I'll have to get this herd up to the Chisholm Trail and to market in Abilene. I suspect Tater is the right kind of horse for the long drive northward." On Rose's first trip to Abilene, while right outside of Caldwell, that irascible, full of outrage and ire outlaw, Jesse Baines, and his gang of desperados tried to rustle that herd away from Rose. Using the spare metal rod she always carried with her, Rose lassoed those hot-tempered hooligans up good and tight. She dropped them all off to jail, tied them up in a neat iron bow. It wasn't any trouble at all, she told Sheriff Weaver. Somebody had to put a stop to their thieving ways. But that wasn't the only thieving going on. The mighty sun was draining the moisture out of every living thing it touched. Even the rocks were crying out. Those clouds stood by and watched it all happen. They weren't even trying to be helpful. While the air had turned so dry and sour, time seemed to all but stand still. There was not a drop of water in sight. Steer will not move without water, and that was making those bulls mad, real mad. And when a bull gets angry, it's like a disease that's catching. Makes the rest of the herd mad, too. Tater was looking parched, mighty thirsty. So she's riding a big bull instead of a horse. "I've got to do something about this," Rose declared, stretching out several iron rods, lasso fashion. Then launching Cole high in the air, Rose hoped she could get the heavens to yield forth. She caught hold of a mass of clouds and squeezed them hard, real hard, all the while humming her song. Gentle rain began to fall, but anyone looking could see there was not enough moisture to refresh 2 ants, let alone a herd of wild cows. Suddenly, a rotating column of air came swirling and swirling around, picking up everything in its path. It sneaked up on Rose. "Whoa there now, just hold on a minute," Rose called out to the storm. Tater was helpless to do anything about that sort of wind. Those meddlesome clouds caused it. They didn't take kindly to someone telling them what to do, and they were set on creating a righteous rampage all on their own. Oh, this riled Rose so much she became the only 2-legged tempest to walk the western plains. "You don't know who you're fooling with," Rose called out to the storm. Her eyes flashed lightning. She bit down and gnashed thunder from her teeth. "I don't know why anyone would want to mess with a pretty young woman who had the power of thunder and lightning coursing through her veins, but pity for them, the clouds did." Rose reached for her iron rod. There was only one piece left. She did not know which way to turn. She knew coal alone was not enough to do the job right. Unarmed against her own growing thirst and the might of the elements, Rose felt weighted down. Then that churning column split, and now there were two. They were coming at her from opposite directions. Rose had some fast thinking to do. Never being one to bow down under pressure, she considered her options, for she was not sure how all this would come out in the end. Wow, look at a horse fly through the air, and hats and wagons. Ooh. What's Rose going to do? Here's one of them. Looks like they're getting pretty close to Rose. Let's see what happens. Is this fork in the road with which I have my final supper? Is this the fork in the road with which I have my final supper? Will this be my first and last ride of the roundup? She queried in herself in the depths of her heart. Her contemplations brought her little relief as she witnessed the cataclysmic efforts of the windstorm bent on her disaster. Then the winds joined hands and cranked and churned a path heading straight toward her. Calmly, Rose spoke out loud to the storm as she stood alone to face the rack and ruin and multiplying devastation. I could ride at least one of you out to the end of time, but I've got this fortunate feeling rumbling deep in the pit of me, and I see what I am to do with this day, Rose said, smiling. The winds belted a rambling pitch. Rose squarely faced that storm. Come and join me, winds. She opened her arms wide as if to embrace the torrent. She opened her mouth as if she were planning to take a good long drink. But from the deep inside her, she heard a melody so real and sweet and true. And when she lifted her heart, she unleashed her song of thunder. It was a sight to see. Rose making thunder and lightning rise and fall to the ground at her command, and at the sound of her song. Oh, how her voice rang out so clear and real and true. It rang from the mountaintops. It filled up the valleys. It flowed like a healing river in the breathing air around her. Those tornadoes, calmed by her song, stopped their churning masses and raged no more. And as gently as a baby's bath, a soft, drenching, and soaking rain fell. And Rose realized that by reaching into her own heart to bring forth the music that was there, she had even touched the heart of the clouds. The stories of Rose's amazing ability spread like wildfire, far and wide. And as sure as thunder follows lightning and sun follows rain, whenever you see a spark of light flash across the heavy, still gray sky, listen to the sound of the thunder and think of Thunder Rose and her song, that mighty, mighty song pressing on the bullseye that was set at the center of her heart. Wow, what a story. That was something else, wasn't it? What did you think about Thunder Rose? She's an amazing character. Lots of exciting language, lots of personification in this story, lots of figurative language. We'll get into some more of that the next time we read it and just look a little deeper at parts of the story there. Well, today I need you to do 2 assignments for me. The first one is just a spelling practice. I've got your spelling words on a little practice form, so you can choose the one that's spelled correctly, just the first 10 words. Then also we'll look at the suffix less today. So we have a little assignment on spelling and on the suffix less. So I'll let you get to work on that. We'll dig deeper into our story about Thunder Rose tomorrow. See you then.